You all right? Hanging in there? Good stretch. I should have said this again for those of you who weren't here last night. So this is a semester-long class that I teach, and one of the kind of challenges. So I forgive me for all the text, but I was trying to. Normally there'd be 5, 6, 7, 8 books that the students would read, and then we would go through these things. I was trying to kind of, how can I give you all the experience of, or approximate the experience of having read the text without actually having read the text. So that's the reason for all that. So I try to kind of, I mean, if I just paraphrase everything, then you don't actually see some of like his friends and the quotes and things like that. So that's the balance we're trying to strike. Okay, so we move here. Let's go to this slide here to kind of take stock. Wojtyła as professor and archbishop. So he does a second doctoral dissertation from 51 to 53. Now, the European system is more research focused and less. The American system is more based on a bunch of classes and also the dissertation as well. But basically what this was, it wasn't as if he went somewhere and took more classes. This is where he did his dissertation, a second dissertation on Max Scheler, and this is his kind of foray into phenomenology. So he still lives in Krakow. The Archbishop moved him, and this is actually the reason why he heard those confessions at St. Mary's daily from 51 to 58, because the Archbishop knew that if I don't move you at least a little bit, you'll never get this thing done. He became professor of ethics at KUL, Catholic University of Lublin, in 1954. The plan was he was going to teach at the Jagiellonian, but the communists suppressed the theology faculty there. And so what happens then is it's something like an 8-hour train commute. He's going to commute overnight to KUL and live in Krakow, but teach at the Catholic University of Lublin. He became bishop at age 38. Youngest bishop in Poland, 38 years old. He found out about that, actually. He was on one of the Shortovisko kayaking trips, and he was called that he had to go see Wyszynski, and that's how he was informed that this was happening. He becomes Archbishop in 64. He attended all 4 sessions of Vatican II from 1962 to 1965. And by the way, we'll get to Vatican II in a second. The reason he took the name John Paul was an embrace of the council. It was an embrace of John the 23rd, who called the council, and Paul VI, who closed the council. I've long thought that if I ever teach a class on Vatican II, I think I'll do Wojtyła first, because he is Vatican II. And you know who else was there? Each archbishop was able to bring what's called a peritus, a theological expert to advise them. Also was there was a 35-year-old peritus named Joseph Ratzinger. They were both there at Vatican II in different capacities. Okay, now this is intriguing. As you saw with the Wyszynski when he was arrested, so the communists basically had veto power over who became archbishop. And the deals that are being worked out is that the church would propose names and the communists could shoot them down. Wojtyła was 7th on the list. There's actually, this is really intriguing, there's reason to believe that the communists wanted Wojtyła. And here's some of Weidel's commentary on that. Wojtyła's age may have had something to do with it. So there was basically something like a 2-year logjam between the death. Well, this is actually gets even more interesting. So technically, Sepieha dies. I believe it's in 51. I have to check. It's shortly after World War II. He's an old man during World War II. And then this Baziak becomes the de facto Archbishop of Krakow, but the communists never approved of him. So technically, it was vacant from Sepieha to Wojtyła, even though there was this Baziak that filled the role. In 62, Baziak dies, and there's this logjam over who the next appointment's going to be that will be approved by the communists. Weidel kind of gives some commentary on why would the communists why is it the case, and there's quotes that he shows you in there, where you have this official actually telling another another priest saying, look, we're going to veto everybody until we get to Wojtyła. And they vetoed 7 until they got to Wojtyła was in the 7th grade. His age may have something to do with it. The gray beards of the Polish Communist leadership would have thought him at 42 a boy. So in 62 he's 40. So remember, he's 1920s born. In 62 he's 42. Unseasoned, someone who could be manipulated. Then there was his utter lack of interest in politics as they understood politics. So again, he didn't go in for the kind of realpolitik. Let's get to know all the big players, let's schmooze and rub the right elbows, and let's kind of play political hardball. That's just not how he played the game. And so he looked the part of one who could be manipulated. He was an intellectual, a bit abstract, not very knowledgeable about the nitty-gritty public life, a man who would be satisfied with vague assurances, this combination of age, intellectuality, and experience made carefully to the perfect pawn for achieving their long-standing strategic goal, dividing the Polish hierarchy in order to marginalize the primate, that's Wyszynski, and diminish the church's public influence. Now, what's intriguing, so Sapieha, the Cardinal Archbishop during World War II, was very much a father figure to Wojtyła. He's the one that brings the underground seminary and then eventually brings them into his own home because it's too dangerous after the Warsaw Uprising. Wyszynski, so it's hard to say, but there is a quote from Wyszynski early on. He said, what do you think of Wojtyła? And he said, he's a poet. In other words, some think that Wyszynski also thought Wojtyła was too young and not ready for this. Others think that Wyszynski threw 7 names that were going to get vetoed because he wanted Wojtyła. So it's pretty hard to say, but it's intriguing how the relationship with Wyszynski develops over time. Partly because Wojtyła was an academic, Wyszynski often didn't trust academics, things like that. Okay, so KUL professor, so Catholic University of Lublin. It's the only Catholic university afloat under the Eastern Bloc at this time. He takes an overnight commute by train from Krakow to KUL, because as I said, it was suppressed the theology faculty at the Jagiellonian. So these are just little intriguing anecdotes that I didn't just give you, again, the picture of the man. So there's an apartment for visiting Professor KUL, including a double room, a triple room, and a single room. Wojtyła never asked for the single room. The others often would fight over it. He never asked for it. Once, when there was no bed free, he slept on the table. I mentioned poverty last night. Again, he really lived out in an exemplary way a life of poverty. He never had a bank account, never had a check, never had any personal money. Slept on the floor, practiced other forms of self-discipline, self-denial, possessions meant nothing to him. With the possible exception of the skiing and hiking equipment he accepted from his sugar beet girlfriend. He loved that. But he really, a couple things they say about him is that he never gave a task more time than it needed. Like they say he was legendary for being able to work 16, 18 hours a day, but that he didn't give a task more time than it needed, which for me strikes me as deep humility. Because it's really easy to be a perfectionist and overwork a task to death. And the other thing, well, we'll see more of this as we go. Malinsky, by now a fellow priest who once threw his friend's rusty old razor away and gave him a new one for a name day present, if he hadn't thrown the old one out, he was sure Wojtyła would have given the new one away, as he did with most gifts. He always wore an old cassock and old shoes. The one complaint about him, this is good, was that he seemed to live according to his own personal chronometer, set to Wojtyła's standard time. He was known for legendarily always being late because he'd get caught up in a conversation and he would just be enthralled in you. He was there with the person before him, or his voracious and incessant reading as Weigel. So he was known for being late a lot. He told the students he was up to crack out of time, not leaving them. He donated his salary anonymously to a scholarship fund that helped impoverished students pay for their education. Wojtyła was an enormously popular professor, always approachable in or out of class. So all the Shorowisko stuff we just talked about holds true with him as a professor. Again, he's 34, so he's a young professor at Lublin. His talent for relating material to the issues of everyday life gave his classes a concreteness that students found attractive. This was someone fascinated by people and the human condition in all its variety, the mystery of the person. A man capable of fostering a deeper interaction with students than other faculty members. He was interested, so this is one former student, he was interested in us as persons. As one former student summarized his magnetism. Okay, so you can see where this is starting to head. So the last 4 years, like 56 through basically through 60, he's teaching, and the best way to write a book is to teach classes on it first, and then when you get all the bad stuff out, and we give you the objections, and then you start fixing things, right? This was, so his upper level classes were on this for a series of years just before the book comes out. With his more advanced students, like Shervisco, again, kind of a laboratory for his own development ideas, in 57, he went on a vacation with philosophy, psychology, and medical students in northeastern Poland. There he discussed with them a draft of the book he was writing on sexual and marital ethics, which, like his monographic lectures for the next 2 years, would be called Love and Responsibility. The draft text was circulated before the group left for the lake country. Each day, a different student prepared a presentation on a given chapter, which the entire group then discussed and debated. According to Wojtyła's student and friend, Jerzy Gałkowski, Wojtyła was not only interested in his students' judgment of the book's theoretical soundness, but also wanted to know if what he had written made sense to them on a practical human level. So he's known as being a very popular professor. Again, for him, academic life and pastoral life, they meshed. And we all are called to different things. He was a first-rate academic, but very clearly he subordinated that enterprise to the promulgation of the gospel. His academic projects and his pastoral work definitely were interweaving all the time. All right, so this is more Nova Huta. You ever heard of Nova Huta? So it means new mill. Basically, this is the ethos that the communists are trying to create: define the present, redefine the past, and be the arbiter of the future. Nova Huta is just outside of Krakow. It's the first town in Poland, in the history of Poland, built intentionally without a church. It was designed to be the new mill, the new model Soviet workers' town with no need for God. They had no church, but as I said, 58, he's bishop. In 1959, December 24th, he begins a tradition of celebrating open-air Christmas Eve masses. This is Poland, my friends. It's cold. And in fact, the people, see, here's the thing. This was the lie that broke communism, particularly in Poland. Stalin famously said, to try to impose communism on Poland was like trying to fit a saddle on a cow. What made Poland different than everywhere else was the relentless Catholic faith. The people would the workers there put up a cross where they wanted a church to be built. And many times over, the communists would come and drag it down, and they'd put it back up. They'd drag it down and put it back up. That open-air mass begins in 59. We're going to go through this in a second, but the communist government had to grant permission to build a new church as a way of choking off the church's growth. An average of 30 applications a year for building permits for a church were submitted under Wojtyła's episcopate. 30 years, just keep going. They finally get permission in 67. This church is built and paid for by the people in 77. 18 years it took. Again, Nova Huta and the battle over Nova Huta, again, is emblematic of this struggle for the Polish soul in the midst of communist Poland. Again, what I do with my students is it's hard to take this all in, but if you can get a couple emblematic examples and latch onto those, they can be kind of a skeleton to kind of guide your way through. Nova Huta, it's not the only one, but it certainly is. It's probably the most famous one and fits the bill. Okay, I mentioned Vatican II. And again, the crucial issue of the times, he suggested Wojtyła was the human person. A thoroughgoing Christian humanism is front and center at Vatican II, and this is very much Wojtyła's influence. That's what this, at the end of 2,000 years, what does the world want to hear from the church? What can this church uniquely give the world? What can you get from the church that you can't get anywhere else? A thoroughgoing Christian humanism. The church did not exist for itself, the church exists for the salvation of the world. And again, part of the irony is, with all this secular humanism, what exactly did it produce? Look at the 20th century. 2 world wars, 2 totalitarian powers. This was the point. Let's counterpose that to an authentic Christian humanism, and let's call out the Marxist lie that faith in God does not dehumanize. It thoroughly humanizes. It makes me more human than I was before, because it actualizes all that is latent in my human nature and all that I'm called to engage in. One of the documents that Wojtyła had a lot of influence over was Gaudium et Spes. And here's this line is like a leitmotif throughout his entire pontificate. The truth is that only in the mystery of the incarnate Word does the mystery of man take on life. For Adam, the first man, was a figure of him who was to come, namely Christ the Lord. Christ, the final Adam, was, by the revelation of the mystery of the Father and his love, fully reveals man to himself and makes his supreme calling clear. That Jesus Christ teaches us from beginning to end the fullness of what it means to be human. And then 2 chapters later, verse 24, man, who's the only creature on earth which God willed for itself, cannot fully find himself except through a sincere gift of himself. Not grasping and taking, but self-gift is the gospel paradox that leads to authentic fulfillment and happiness and joy. This runs throughout his thought, throughout his pontificate. This Christian humanism, and who exemplifies self-gift? See, for Wojtyła, it's love that fully actualizes human nature. And that love is fully manifest in self-gift. Greater love has no man than he who would lay down his life for his friends, John 15:13. That Jesus teaches us the fullness of what it means to be human. The faith, grace, doesn't annihilate, doesn't abolish nature. It perfects, it heals, and it elevates human nature. Okay, now let's move into him as Archbishop. So 7 priorities as Archbishop. They say of Wojtyła he's a bishop who governed on his knees. Something that Hans Urs von Balthasar got right is the need to do theology on our knees. They say he governed on his knees. And he did a lot of his writings, even as Pope, with a desk in front of our Blessed Sacrament, our Lord and the Blessed Sacrament. Number 1, religious freedom. So we've already hit this a little bit, but as we said, so I got two examples here. One, the building of churches. So Nova Huda is the outstanding example of that. Permits could not be legally established or church buildings constructed without the government's permission. By denying permits, could choke off the church's growth. Wojtyła, now we didn't mention this as much yet, but would create facts. Door-to-door evangelization. Create a parish without a building. And then say, hey, look, the parish is here. It's a fait accompli. The people want a church. You say you're the government of the people. So he would leverage that by even doing things like dogged door-to-door evangelization of the neighborhood over a period of months or years. Then when a living parish has been created, the government will be presented with a fait accompli. Look, people want a church. This is what Nova Huda had, 18 years. The other thing is the Corpus Christi procession. So traditionally in Poland, there's a long route with altars set up along the way, and the archbishop would preach at these altars. I mean, what's happening here with religious freedom is this. The communists would grant, if you want a privatized freedom to keep it to yourself, to keep it private, fine. But get out of the public square. That's what it's about. It's about the church's freedom to be herself in the public square. Let's go to the Polish communist strategy was to reduce Polish Catholicism to a folk memory. Cardinal Wojtyła, as I said, became cardinal in 1967. Struggle for religious freedom was the struggle to secure room for a living church, proclaiming the truth about human life and human destiny, and living that truth through service to all of society. If that could be secured, totalitarianism would by definition have failed. Really, wherever you go, communists get squeamish about transcendent truth. Yeah, if I may, this isn't the same thing, but like a famous quote from Thomas Hobbes is that justice flows from the will of the sovereign. But as soon as you go that route, you've really lost the ability to have an unjust law. If you step into the Aquinas framework, law is an ordinance of reason. And so a law that contradicts right reason becomes an unjust law. But notice that provides a transcendent check. It's not just power, it's reason. It's not just power, it's truth. It's not just will, it's intellect. You follow me there? It makes all the difference in the world. If you want to get a contemporary example, great example of it, read Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail. And watch him quote Socrates, watch him quote Aquinas, watch him quote Augustine, watch him quote Amos, watch him quote St. Paul, and watch him defend the dignity of human rights and human life on those thoroughly Christian philosophical grounds. So 1, religious freedom. 2, seminary and priestly formation. The secret of pastoral success, he believed, was a priest's holiness and his commitment to care of souls. He was known for getting to know each future priest personally and continuing to meet with them, often on the ski slopes. Now, bear with me here. This is a charming little anecdote. But he would discipline young priests in a distinctive way. He once had to call in an assistant pastor who had committed what the priest later recalled as a serious misdemeanor. In a lengthy session of the offense, see, here's the thing, a bishop is a father, yes, to the flock, but also to his presbytery, also to his priests. What I think you get out of Wojtyła is father. I know I'm digressing, but yes, familiar, yes, intimate, yes, you could ask me anything, but also not a buddy. And as kids, and this has been my time, I'm sure a lot of you can say this even more so than I can, as they mature, kids, students, they become the kind of people that were they not your students or your kids, you call them your friends. You can get there, but you don't start there. If that makes sense. Wojtyła told the curate in no uncertain terms about the gravity of the offense and reprimanded him severely. The cardinal then led the young priest into his chapel so they could pray. The older man knelt so long that the curate became nervous. His train was scheduled to leave shortly to take him back to his parish. Finally, Cardinal Wojtyła stood up, looked at the young man he had just chastised, and said, "Would you please hear my confession now?" Stunned, the assistant pastor went to the confessional where Wojtyła confessed before him. That's humility. That's humility. One of the greatest, at least so I'm told, points of respect one priest can pay to another is to say, "Would you hear my confession?" Because priests can't forgive themselves, right, Father?
I do.
Is that in itself? You know, on this prayer, there's lots of stories. I didn't put this up here, but when he was appointed bishop at 38, he went to this Ursuline convent, and he just said, "Sisters, can I pray in your chapel?" I'm like, "Sure, come on in, Father." And he's there, and they kind of, it's been a few hours. So they go to check on him. He's laying prostrate before the Blessed Sacrament. They come back a little bit later like, Father, do you want to come to supper? And they're kind of like, is he a penitent? Like, did he do something really bad? Is that what and he just said, my train doesn't leave till midnight. I've got a lot to talk about with the Lord. And he just, the prayer life that he had, the way in which he just lived in God's presence, there's lots of stories about him just groaning in prayer. There's stories about, even as Pope on a visit, like, where did he go? And did you check the chapel? Oh, there he is. We lost the Pope. He's in the chapel. There was just a mystical part of him that, again, prayer, I think, I know you all know this, but it's not simply bartering with God. It's not just thanking him. It's being in his presence as two lovers gaze upon one another. I do think, if I may, in all of our catechesis, all of our apologetics, all of our outreach, we forget sometimes to teach people how to pray. And if they don't learn to pray and cultivate that relationship with our Lord, all the doctrine doesn't make as much sense. It takes its life within the context of that relationship. Wojtyła knew this, and he got this first from Tyranowski. And you better believe this is what he passed on to that środowisko. He didn't just teach doctrine, he taught them how to know the Lord. Okay, youth ministry, family ministry, there's lots of things on this. It's very important to them. Okay, here's a name we haven't talked about, Jerzy Cyzielski, who, by the way, is servant of God. He's one of the early środowisko members. He becomes an engineer. Again, this is fascinating. What happens is so they meet in the early 50s, and they start helping out in ministries with him. Your faith often grows when you give it away. Your faith grows by sharing. Cyzielski, along with other young men and women whom he had helped prepare for marriage, had been involved in various pioneering efforts to create an archdiocese-wide program of marriage preparation in the early 1960s. As Archbishop faced with the Polish regime's relentless efforts to undermine family life, Wojtyła expanded this form of pastoral care so that it reached into every corner of the archdiocese through a network of lay activists he helped to train. He did a lot of things that are commonplace today, like having nurses and psychologists and a whole kind of an interdisciplinary approach. He was doing this in 1960. Have you ever heard of those Institutes on Marriage and Family by JP2? Here's where it started, right here. This Cyzielski, by the way, him and Wojtyła were very, 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 very close. They say that Cyzielski just boundless energy. He's the one who taught Wojtyła how to kayak. When Wojtyła thought about the lay vocation and the universal call of holiness, I mentioned one last night, there were two people that he thought, these are the models. They exemplify it. It was Tyranowski, and the second was Cyzielski. And part of Cyzielski's story that just tears you up. In 1970, he had a visiting professorship, I believe in Egypt, and he was on a tour boat on the Nile. Him, two younger kids, and then an older daughter. And he and the younger kids were asleep kind of down below, and there was this tragic accident. Only the older daughter, who was up top, made it. Wojtyła was heartbroken, completely heartbroken, completely torn up. Wojtyła was in Rome at the time, and he met the wife, and he said, please wait for me to say the funeral. And so eventually he did. Cyzielski was cremated because his body was so mangled. His remains, now there's another, just tuck this away if you ever get to Krakow, the St. Anne's Collegiate Church. So you have St. Florence, St. Anne's. If you face the altar, and on the right, his remains are there in a plaque. My first tour guide had no idea. I'm like, no, we got to go to St. Anne's because Cyzielski is there. And sure enough, there he is. So his remains, his ashes are there. Cyzielski, as I said, is now a servant of God. Again, so many of the people who formed Wojtyła or whom he formed are blessed or servants of God, or they have canonizations that are open and investigations going on. This radiation of sanctity, something happened there in Krakow that is not an accident, that can I say, I mean, maybe can't be reproduced in the same way, but we can learn from it, and we can apply a lot of these things. Dialogue, so religious freedom, seminary, priesthood formation, youth ministry, family ministry, dialogue with intellectuals. See, he wasn't afraid of them. He wasn't afraid to build bridges and build coalitions. And in fact, I didn't mention this, but a lot of those early Shortovisko members, I can give you a couple names: Jerzy Janek, Cyzielski. Janek was a physicist, Cyzielski an engineer. He would meet with them a couple times a year, and those were his windows to those parts of the world. So Janek would gather groups of physicists, and they would talk to Wojtyła, present a paper, and discuss what's happening there. Cyzielski would get engineering friends. They'd meet a couple times a year. They'd present a paper, talk what's going on there. He did a whole session with the physicists on Aquinas' view of nature and how it resonated with what they're doing back and forth. I mean, he had so many windows into the world, and he stayed in touch, and vice versa. It was such a fruitful relationship on both sides. So, unlike bishops who thought of intellectuals as threats, Wojtyła thought of them as friends and allies. He would have parties at his archbishop's residence. He would bring non-Catholic, especially, say, atheistic intellectuals who were disenchanted with communism. See, part of what brings it down is you get a coalition of, yes, Catholics, but workers and intellectuals together, and all of a sudden you've got coalitions going on that the communists are like, what in the world is happening? And this is part of what eventually brings it down. The tension in the intellect of this thoroughly modern and culturally literate man, who was a completely convinced Christian, had been one of the qualities that first attracted young intellectuals during his days at St. Florian's. High ecclesiastical office did loosen that tension, and the electricity it generated, if anything, it sharpened. This is part of the kind of intrigue. Here you have this culturally literate man, this first-rate academic, who is a convinced disciple. So dialogue with intellectuals, ministry of charity, which was not permitted to exist in communist Poland, where Catholic charitable institutions and organizations were banned from 1950 on. Beginning in 1963, each parish established a parochial charity team that included permanent members called parish guardians and volunteers. Their task was to identify and care for the sick and needy in the parish's geographic territory, irrespective of religious affiliation. Non-Catholics and non-believers were, Wojtyła urged, part of the parish's responsibility. The team provided food, medicine, and clothing to the needy, nursed shut-ins in their homes, and carried out extensive home visitation programs. Parish visitations. So, and again, this completely prefigures his papacy. They say his travels circumnavigated the globe something like 3 times. The passage, if you recall, from Luke 22, verse 32, where Jesus prays for Peter individually, he says, Peter, I pray for your faith, that your faith may not fail, and when you turn, strengthen your brethren. The reason he traveled so much is he saw his role in the office of Peter. He had to go strengthen the local churches wherever they are. This really begins as Archbishop. He would make lengthy visitations. Large blocks of time for lengthy visitations of parishes of the Archdiocese. When these parish visitations lasted several days, they often included a celebration of the sacrament of confirmation for parish youth. The Cardinal always celebrated a special mass for married couples and blessed each couple individually. In addition to talking with the parish clergy, Wojtyła met with the parish religion teachers and local nuns. If there was a cemetery, he prayed the rosary for the souls of the faithful departed. Blessed any new graves. The Cardinal also met with different lay groups for discussions about their work, their study, their charitable activity. The atmosphere he created was that of a retreat in which conversations longer and deeper than usual were the norm. He had a knack for, there's a number of examples where, sometimes in some places in the church, bishops can be a little nervous about kind of charismatic apostles popping up, and how well do you fit into the structures that already exist, and that can be a real concern. He really had a knack for, look, if you're doctrinally orthodox, I'm willing to countenance a few wild flowers to see what happens. Because he was convinced if you've got imagination and you've got nerve, you can make something happen. But part of his presence here is being a part of that. Is getting to know what's going on in his diocese. Aging Churubusco. As I said, from 53 to 78, you have those kayaking trips. They only stop because he becomes Pope. He's elected in 78. But he still stays in touch. And there's moving accounts of, in the year 2000, for example, something like 200 came to visit him. And he insisted on getting time with each one of them. This is at Castle Gandolfo, kind of a summer residence near the Vatican. Got to know their grandkids. There's the Rubitsky that you read about, that you saw earlier, when he was dying of cancer in the early 2000s. So one of the things that they would do is they'd go sing Christmas carols, and John was like, called him and said, because he knew he was dying, said, do you remember when we used to sing carols? We used to sing, yeah. Let's sing together now. And they sang together over the phone. These weren't just this was his family. This was his family. This, I think, is a charming little story. Tradition Wojtyła had begun for the children of Churubusco. Eventually moved to the Archbishop's residence. When the children became teenagers, Wojtyła told their parents that they had to give them a real party. So the annual Kinderball, a little party before Lent. Now with dancing, moved to the home of Teresa, that should be a Z right there, Zyczkowska. The Cardinal Archbishop came and wrote, so the A is the feminine ending. When you're talking about the whole family, including the man, then that's where you get the IS. It's the same family. He wrote in their guest book, not much has changed since their parents were doing this, except the music. Signed, Vuya. Signed, Vuya. But can you just see this grandfather here? And by the way, some of you are asking about the smaller biographies. One I didn't mention that I typically have my students read and write a paper on is by Cardinal Dziwisz. It's so DZ is a J sound in Polish. DZIWISH, Dziwisz. He was his secretary as Archbishop from 64, and then he's about 20 years younger than Wojtyła. Wojtyła brings him to Rome and he becomes Pope. And so the book's called A Life with Carol, My 40-Year Friendship with the Man Who Became Pope. And that book is almost like sitting on the couch with your grandfather and having him tell stories about his old friend. I mean, it's just so, it's different than an academic biography, tons of footnotes and whatnot. It's just, I mean, it's really, really charming to read that. So, Dziwisz, DZIWISH. Moving on from the 7 priorities, charming anecdotes. And just tell me, is this not 007? By the way, in the Dziwisz book, he'll tell you, in terms of like bugging the Archbishop's residence, they would send like fake workers over, look at the telephone line, and they would plant like bugs. Dziwisz will give you accounts about how they knew this, and he would almost play with them. He'd speak really loudly when he wanted them to hear something, and then they'd go out in the woods when they had to have a real conversation. So they were increasingly paranoid. There's a story, this prison warden he had an abbot in prison, and right when Wojtyła was named Archbishop, he said, that's exactly who he wanted. And then 4 months later, he came back and said, Wojtyła swindled us. Because they underestimated the confidence, and all the things they thought would be strengths for them became their nemesis. The regime's increasing anger with the cardinal also began to touch the Churubusco summer holiday, the 2-week kayak trip. In 77, at the end of the annual kayak trip, the SB, so the county secret police, arrived at the campsite soon after the cardinal had left in his car and started checking the identity papers of the Churubusco members who had remained. The following year, during what would be Wujek's last kayaking trip, the arrangements were changed. Wojtyła's car drove along the main road toward the kayaking site, followed by his now regular SB tail. At a prearranged point, the Cardinal's driver sped up, briefly lost the tail, and then quickly turned off onto a small side road that wove back and forth through the fields. Stanislaw Rybicki was waiting. Wujek jumped into his car, and off they went. The Cardinals' car and driver returned to Krakow along the main road, still followed by the SB. Is that not a right? The same procedure was used in reverse at the end of the trip. Okay. This is just too charming to pass up. The regime's security paranoia can have its amusing aspects. Wojtyła was once skiing in the Tatras near the Czechoslovak border. He was stopped by the border patrol. The cardinal handed over his papers, but the militiaman, not recognizing him, began to berate Wojtyła. You moron! Do you know whose papers you've stolen? This is going to put you away for a long time. When Wojtyła protested his innocence, the militiaman shot back, "A skiing cardinal? Do you think I'm crazy?" Wojtyła, who was once asked whether it was becoming for a cardinal to ski, answered, "It's unbecoming for a cardinal to ski badly." Finally sort things out with militiaman's superior. My hope is at this point you've gotten at least a glimpse of the man from his youth, his Polish background, his ministry to those college students, as archbishop. All of this, does it not prefigure his papacy very much so? I mean, what happened was Krakow came to Rome, and Krakow went from Rome to the Universal Church. Again, for my part, it's just not the same to pick up Love and Responsibility, to pick up this book and just read it as a set of ideas. If you don't know the backstory that gave rise to this, if you don't know the real human side of what happened to you. So, as I said, my favorite part of with my classes is I'll take the Bible to this point, then we'll read this, and then we'll read Jubilee. And students typically will say, thank you, because I never really knew the man. I didn't know the man. I've heard of TOB, I've heard of pro-life, I've heard of this, I've heard of that, but I didn't know the man. We've got a few more minutes, right? Let's see. We can kind of intro L&R, or would it be helpful to kind of recap some names and themes just briefly from the 2 nights together? Number two? Okay. Names, okay. So names that my students would have to have command on. Let's go in chronological order. So obviously his dad, key influence. And again, his parents, if you were here last night, both his mother and his father, their causes for canonization are now being investigated. Father Figlewicz, Figlewicz, key young priest in Wadowice, his hometown, teaches him how to serve. The Pope's future idol comes to Krakow, continues to mentor him there. Jan Tyranowski, Jan Tyranowski, Tyrannowski. Remember, Tyranowski's the one who heard that Salesian homily in 1935. It's not difficult to be a saint. Changes his life, and little does he know, he's going to be a formative influence over a man who's going to become Pope. Again, he has no idea. He's single, could have wished it all away. His yes to the Lord in 35 prepared him to be instrumental throughout the Nazi occupation. Blessed Joseph Kowalski, so Kowalski, so he was the young Salesian priest of the parish that Wojtyła and his father attended, St. Stanislaus Kostka in Krakow, that was shipped off to Auschwitz. The Nazis said, hey, grind these rosary beads with your foot. He says no. They drown him in a barrel of feces. He's 31 years old. This is the young formative influence and witness around the college-age Wojtyła. Again, Wojtyła is a great, great man. But there are great people behind the scenes that made him the man that he became. Archbishop Sapieha was the elderly archbishop and eventually cardinal during World War II of Krakow. He's the one that asked to retire before World War II. turned 70 in 1940, and Pius was like, no, it's too turbulent. I can't let you do that now. And lo and behold, he's got to face down the Nazis. You've had Szydzelski, my students I typically have to know Szydzelski. Cultural resistance is a theme. Środowisko. Knowing the word, see, what happens with some of this is, these are things that I know, but having language empowers me. To have środowisko as a catchword for virtuous friendship, I've seen it empower communities. We want to be like that. What does it mean to be like that? We can have fun, but we also got purpose. We also got purpose. His mother dies, he's almost 9. His father dies when he's 20, he's almost 21. His brother dies when he's 12. Let's maybe, just maybe 2 slides here. L&R.
Sorry.
Yes.
Just curious, are you familiar with the biographical movies that have been made sort of around him, and do you recommend anything in that regard?
I do. So there's some good. So the one with John Boyd is good. It's good. But the one that I show my students every semester, or when I teach this class, that I typically will have the students over to the house and we'll watch. It's the 2-3 hour movie. It's 6 hours, so it's an investment. But the one that's Carol, the Man Who Became Pope. That was the movie that was made. The first one though was actually a TV series filmed on-site in Poland by Polish actors, but in English. I think it has the same name. So it's 2-3 hour things. In every movie, there's some artistic liberties that are taken, but the impression, I think, is exactly right. So that's the one. So if you're familiar with that, the Father Thomas figure, that's Figlovitz. That's Figlovitz. Now, they make it sound almost like he was in school with him, so they kind of combine some characters a little bit. But the Father Thomas figure that he's serving Mass for when World War II breaks out at Wawel, that's Figlovitz. I think on that one, I don't think they quite did justice to Tiranovsky, but you can't do justice to everybody. It'd be 10 hours, right? But that's the one that I show my students. So Carol, the Man Who Became Pope, I think they captured the Nazi period, the communist period very, very well. And then even his life as Pope, I think they did a phenomenal job personally. Can I say, how about Hayes? I've driven through, but what a beautiful town. I took a little jog and I'm like, man, this is really something right here in Western Kansas. So thank you for your hospitality. It's very impressive. What's our, how are you doing?
We need to go.
What's that?
It's time for some football.
See, the Buckeye in me. The Buckeye in me. So let's do some football. So can we close in prayers, is that right? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord Jesus Christ, we praise you, we bless you, we adore you, we glorify you. We give you thanks, we give you thanks. We thank you for bringing us to a time such as this. Lord, we don't want to be part of an easy time. We're honored that you've called us here at this time. And Lord, we know that you have plans for us, for each one of us, that you have a plan for us. You have a calling and a role for each of us to play. No matter how young, no matter how old, there is something that we're called to. Something that has a role to play in the history of the world that will have eternal consequences. Something mysteriously in your providence that a role that maybe won't be played unless we answer the call. We pray that you may give us your wisdom, that we have the wisdom to know your will and the strength to follow it through. We ask the intercession of St. John Paul the Great, that he may inspire us, that he may pray for us, that we may learn to love, and to love deeply, and to learn to love in a way that is fully informed by the truth. For only the truth has grace. There is no such thing as a loving lie. We ask all this through Christ our Lord, and we pray totus tuus to our Blessed Mother. Hail Mary,
full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy
Blessed Yosef Kowalski,
Pray for us.
Saint Faustina,
Pray for us.
Saint Maximilian Kolbe,
Pray for us.
all the holy angels and saints and men and women of God.
Pray for us.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son,